Good afternoon. I'd like to call the fourth meeting of the Pari-Mutuel Wagering Taxation Task Force to order. I will not make anybody say that 5 times fast. Before we begin, I'd like to ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Senator Rocky Adams.
Here from District 36.
Senator Harper Angel.
Present remotely from the district.
Senator McDaniel.
Present remotely in the 23rd District.
Senator West. Representative Dixon.
Present remotely.
Representative Gentry.
Here in the room.
Representative Cook.
Here in the room.
Representative Petrie.
Present remotely from House District 16.
Chairman Thayer.
Here in the room.
Chairman Koenig.
Here in the room.
Very well. We do have a quorum and are fully constituted to do business. I would like to thank the members both in person and remotely for their attendance today, as well as other members of the General Assembly who are here out of their interest in the topic. Senator John Schickel is here. Representative Dan Pfister is here. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon. We're glad you're here. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 13th, 2021 meeting. If anyone wants to have a look at those.
Move adoption as submitted.
We have a motion from Chairman Koenig and a second from Representative Gentry. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Very well. The minutes are approved. So I had a last-minute addition to the agenda on what sounds to be very exciting, taxation elasticity. Sounds like somebody's buying a new pair of pants or something after a Thanksgiving meal, but I think members who pay attention to economics will find the theory that is going to be espoused today by Dr. Lambert to be pretty similar to economic models that people have read about in the past. It basically says that just because you raise taxes on something doesn't mean you're going to get more money from it into the budget. And so I would like to hear this report and for you all to hear this report as it applies to the tax rate on pari-mutuel wagering. So if Dr. Tom Lambert would please come forward. Dr. Lambert, we are pleased to have you here today, even after the University of Louisville's somewhat embarrassing loss to Wake Forest this weekend. I'm familiar with that concept. If you could please turn your microphone on so that the green light is displayed and officially introduce yourself for the record.
Thanks, and thanks for having me here today. My name is Tom Lambert. I'm with the Equine Administration and Economics departments at the University of Louisville. I teach equine economics. I've also taught a lot of micro and macro economics for the University of Louisville, as well as a lot of introduction to statistics courses. So Sean, the director of our program, Sean Byrne, has asked me to put together a little presentation about elasticity. So I hope it is helpful for the committee and for everyone here today.
Very well. Thank you, Dr. Lambert. Members, do all members have the updated? You should have in your packets a U of L document entitled HHR Taxation Issues.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Lambert, I have read your report, the chairman and I both, and we are very interested in. Excellent. The PowerPoint is available.
Sure. Thank you so much.
And you may proceed, sir.
Thank you. Actually, what I'm here to talk about today is probably.
Could you move the microphone a little? It's a directional mic.
That's right. She told me. I'm sorry.
Very well.
Actually, what I'm going to talk about today is kind of, I mean, if someone has ever had a Principles of Microeconomics course, or if they've noticed what happens when gasoline taxes or some other taxes go up, it's probably really nothing new to them. Other people, this may be some new information, so I'm not sure. I just try to come up with a general presentation on the concept of elasticity. And basically, from microeconomics, you're saying, and the research shows, that oftentimes whenever you increase taxes on something, sometimes you get more revenues, like with gasoline, or if something that has what we call inelastic demand, there are very few substitutes for that item, like gasoline. Basically, the only thing that will make your car run, unless you have a hybrid model or electric car. But for most people, if the tax on gasoline is increased, usually the state gets more money. On other things, however, it doesn't work that way. You can increase taxes. For example, gambling is one thing we've noticed from the research, where you can increase taxes, but you don't get a proportional increase. In fact, you get a decrease. And lots of literature on this. Dr. Thalheimer, who was at the University of Louisville years ago, and Dr. Ali, who was at the University of Kentucky, did some research on how, as gambling gains more competition in a given region, area, Cincinnati, Louisville, or what have you, if you try to increase taxes, say 1%, you may only get, you usually get a less than 1% increase in the revenues from the taxation. It's not like taxing gasoline or anything like that. The price elasticity of demand, as we like to say, is fairly elastic, so that the increase you get in tax revenues is not proportional to the tax rate increase. So the problem, I guess, with gambling, if you want to look at it that way, or just in general, maybe you don't want to look at it as
Doctor?
Yes.
They're still having trouble hearing you on the
okay,
virtual,
I'm sorry.
so pull that thing right up there as
right.
close as you can get.
Sure.
And
how's this?
As much as I know you like to look at the faces on both sides of the room,
Okay.
we need you to stay focused on that mic straight ahead.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's
much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. I hope everyone can hear me now. As I was saying, some taxes, as you increase them, say for instance gasoline, the amount of revenue will actually go up greater than in proportion to the tax rate increase. Other items like gambling, that's usually not the case, almost always not the case. So as you look at the literature, and as I was saying earlier, Doctors Thalheimer and Ali did quite a few articles on this. The more competition, the more substitutes there are among different forms of gambling. If you try to increase the taxes, usually the establishments on which the tax increase is levied, they usually lose patrons, because the establishments have to decrease the payout to patrons. And the patrons end up going somewhere else, across the river to Cincinnati or Indiana or what have you. So the price elasticity of demand, as I was saying earlier, for gambling is fairly elastic, so that if you increase taxes perhaps 10%, you'll get gains in revenues, but they're not proportional to the increase in the tax rate. And I'm sure someone has said this already, that if it's a tax on gross revenues, when it comes to gambling, you got the establishments paying out 95% of their gross revenues to the patron. So actually, the effective tax rate is not really 1.5%. Actually, it's much larger.
Thank you for repeating a point that I've been saying for years and has been backed up by previous testimony in this committee. And you can continue to say that as much as you'd like.
Well, it's pretty much a fact, and from what I've seen, Derby City Gaming in Louisville pays out anywhere from 85 to 95% of the gross revenues. So you're talking about, a higher effective tax rate than 1.5%, maybe 20% or 25% in some cases. So And now we're in a much more competitive environment than when Thalheimer, Ali, and some of these other folks who were doing the research 10, 20 years ago were giving estimates of elasticity regarding horse racing gambling. Historical horse racing was not even around then. Anecdotally, I've seen where the casino next to Louisville in southern Indiana, their winnings handle has gone down ever since Derby City Gaming opened. And if similar to other regions of the country, if you lose patrons at one establishment, they go elsewhere. There was a good case study done years ago where I can't remember which one came second, which one was first, but as the taxes were increased on Illinois casinos some years back, the casino patrons in East St. Louis basically left and went across the river to St. Louis, Missouri, to do more gambling. And so that, again, is another illustration of how elastic the demand is for, at least regarding casino gambling. And it's pretty much across all forms of gambling, as according to the research. And again, you've got many substitutes, and now with the sports gambling in in Indiana, we've got a lot of folks. Caesars has probably picked up business there. So I would say that Derby City Gaming is doing well, but again, gambling patrons seem to go wherever there's the highest rate of payout.
Also like to point out, and I'm sure the chairman would back me up on this, the Indiana casinos are getting Kentucky residents to go across the river where sports wagering is currently legal. Exactly. So that brings more patrons into their brick and mortar facilities. Not to mention the hundreds that gather in the McDonald's across the parking lot in Indiana across the river from Louisville wagering sports on their phones.
I've heard stories about that.
It's a fact.
Yes. So as this next slide points out, you won't necessarily get a proportional increase in revenues if you do raise the HHR tax or instant wagering tax, however way you want to put it. Here's some different forecasts using different measurements of elasticity. I mean, compared to a 1-for-1 increase. And then I've got different scenarios if the elasticity is an elasticity of 2, 5, or 10. Given the competitive aspects of the gambling now, I would have to say it probably tends towards a higher elasticity than what we've seen. Particularly when it comes to these regional markets that where you've got border effects, folks being able to go back and forth between Cincinnati and northern Kentucky or Louisville and southern Indiana. Those were the total. These would be the tax revenues with different elasticities. Again, it won't be a 1-for-1 match. So you'll have some slippage as opposed to if you had unitary elasticity, where for every percentage increase you had in the tax rate, you get an equivalent percent increase in the tax revenue. But that gambling, that's not pretty much not the case. And then one final thought I had in looking at the trends in HHR. Going back to 2016, as you get more and more machines added, you're already gaining some revenue. So if you look at a forecast, if you add about 2,000 more machines, as this says, and this is the plan at Turfway and at Derby City Gaming in Louisville, combined, you're going to get, this is what they're saying over the next 2 years, about 2,000 machines. If you look at the statistical trend, that number of machines would earn about, as this says, $286 million more per month or $3.4 billion per year, and should increase state tax revenues by approximately $51 million per year. That's without increasing the tax rate. That's just growth. That's kind of a supply side point of view, I guess. But I mean, if they add, and that's holding all else constant. Now, if in Ohio and Indiana, if their casinos start increasing the payouts just to try to avoid more hemorrhaging of gross revenues, then that could change. But I mean, all else held constant, that's what the forecast or the trend line would predict.
And Dr. Lambert, that this is a conservative estimate because we know since last week that Churchill Downs is planning a downtown historical horse racing facility.
Right.
We know that Ellis Park is considering a track extension in Owensboro. Kentucky Downs is considering a track extension in Bowling Green or Environs. And we also know there's a new track that's going to be built in Corbin that will have the machines, and then a track extension in Williamsburg. So it's probably somewhere north of 2,000 machines.
Probably so when you factor in plans for others or plans for more, right?
And that's an important point that I hope members will take into consideration, that the general fund is going to be getting more revenue regardless of whether we do something or do nothing in the next session or future sessions. It's called growth. It's called jobs, economic opportunity. Every one of these places opens up, creates new jobs. Those people are paying taxes. They're consuming goods that they're paying taxes on. Very good. And then I think the two takeaways are, of course, that with growth, we're going to get more revenue. And the other point you made near the beginning that, and I'd like you to restate it for us, about increasing the rate doesn't mean you're going to get more revenue. I like the way you said it in a more academically perfunctory fashion.
Well, I mean, pretty much gambling is elastic. You have price elasticity of demand greater than 1. If you look at the calculations that's taught in the microeconomics textbooks, so that if you increase the tax rate a certain percentage, the fall off in the quantity demanded for the service, the product, or what have you is greater in proportion to the tax increase. So you actually won't gain as much revenue as you think. And if there comes a certain tipping point as well where you could actually lose revenue in certain cases.
Good old supply side economics.
I think when you look at the trend growth, in that case, it would be accurate. Yeah. Everything else held constant. Now, as I said, if the casinos in Ohio and Indiana decide to suffer some losses, lay off some people, and start increasing their payout, then even if you don't change the tax rate on the other side of the river, you could have some gamblers drifting back over across the river from Kentucky. But everything else held constant, you should have the growth.
Or if the earth shook and the sun, the moon, and the stars aligned, and Tennessee for some reason decided to do. And by the way, Mr. Chairman, what does Tennessee have that we don't have? Sports wagering. Online sports wagering.
Yeah.
So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the competitive market to the southern border could continue to evolve.
Because they believe in freedom.
They believe in freedom in Tennessee. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Chairman? Anytime you can use Tennessee in this building to try to make your point, usually helps. Are there any questions from any members in the room? Any questions from any members in the room? Any questions from any members who are via Zoom? None?
Mr. Chairman,
We have a question.
if I may.
Oh, Chairman Petrie.
And if I need to take these questions offline, I can do that also. Your preference?
Please proceed.
All right, thanks. First off, enjoyed the paper. That's good. Really quickly, and I couldn't really see the charts that were on today, but so what is the elasticity of HHR in Kentucky currently? What do you say it is?
Well, there hasn't been any tax changes so far since it was since HHR came about. So it would be hard to measure, given that there have been no changes since it first came about, to say if you increase the tax or decrease the tax, what would be the proportional change in revenues. You don't have that data.
We know it's not, you would definitely say it's not a 1-to-1, correct?
No. I mean, if you look at other forms of gambling and prior research, I mean, if you look at casino competition or racetrack competition across borders, Cincinnati versus Northern Kentucky, Louisville versus Southern Indiana, or the example I gave just a few minutes ago, East St. Louis versus St. Louis. When taxes go up, typically the establishments decrease their payout, and a lot of patrons tend to drift across to the other side.
Right, and I understand that would work in casinos and odds-based or house odds-based business models. But following up on the elasticity, I understand there may be a lack of data, and then that's a fair response. So we know it's not a 1-to-1, but the lowest ratio could be what?
Well, a couple of years ago, Thalheimer and Ali came up with about 2%. When looking
and was
at
that based on HHR or casino or house gambling or all of the above?
that was based upon racetracks in Cincinnati versus Northern Kentucky.
Gotcha. Now I think I'm correct in this, and I'm not the best on the gambling industry, and everybody knows that. So, but casinos with house odds business models operate differently than Pari-Mutuel HHR, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Help me understand, let's say against all odds, there was some kind of increase in tax in the HHR industry. Okay. Now I understand that you've got money in, you've got less payouts, which we've heard presenters speak to that. How exactly would the tax be passed on to the players as opposed to the industry itself?
Well, typically the research shows that the house, in the case of a casino or the racetrack, basically decreases its payout to patrons.
But that can't happen with Pari-Mutuel, correct?
Well, according to the evidence on the racetracks, it can, and that's Pari-Mutuel wagering. I mean, okay. With Pari-Mutuel wagering, I know you're gambling against other folks who are participating, whether it's betting on that race or what have you, or you're talking about historical horse racing. But it's ultimately, as far as I know, is up to the decision of the track or the gaming center as far as you're gambling against others. But when it comes to the payout, there's a cut that has to go towards the tax eventually. That has to be paid out.
If I'm understanding you correctly, then on the payout, then the industry that's providing, or the company that's providing the HHR machine can set the amount of its payout back to its patrons. Is that correct?
Well, as far as I know, a lot of that depends upon, I mean, the odds and, how good of a day that certain patrons are having. But this
is where I'm
going to let, if I can just interrupt for a second, Chairman Petrie, I'm going to let Chairman Koenig, who's well equipped to answer this question.
Thank you very much.
I think earlier in our first meeting, we had a discussion about what the effective, or not the effective takeout, but what they take out of that, and I believe it was 8-something%, almost 9%. We, for all Pari-Mutuel wagering, I don't know if it's in reg or in statute, but we max out the amount that you are allowed to take out, and a typical takeout across all bets for live is 20%. So we max it out. It's up to the track. They can decide what they take out on any wager, either live or historical, and typically the historical is well below the live, so they're able to they would be able to increase that for the historical to make up for whatever percentage they felt they wanted to, and they could increase it even if we didn't change the tax rate.
Okay, that's extraordinarily helpful, and I appreciate that. So I just want to make sure that I understand that the payout back on the pari-mutuel participant is a payout that is determined artificially, not organically through the pari-mutuel process itself. It's through in essence, the house or the person providing. Is that right?
That's correct. It's called the takeout, and it can be increased or decreased based on business decisions made by the operator, in this case, the racetracks.
That's been my understanding. Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you, each of you. Elasticity, have you looked at elasticity on any other portion of the industry, such as the takeout? If they increased or decreased, would that help or hurt the industry, or whether I think it was referred to as a play previously, kind of a marketing issue, if that increased or decreased? Have you looked at elasticity on any of those other portions of HHR?
Dr. Lambert, he's referring to the free play marketing dollars that are a cost of doing business for the racetracks, for the operators.
No, to be honest about it, I haven't. I mean, there have been no tax changes, so yeah.
Fair enough. And then also...
One more question, Representative Petrie.
And that's why I said I'll be glad. I've got about 6 more, so I'll be glad to take it offline.
Go ahead. Why don't you ask the most important one, and then I'm sure we can arrange a phone call or a Zoom or a meeting between you and Dr. Lambert.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Are you, just real quickly, are you familiar with the industry as a whole and what kind of profit margin we're dealing with and how mature that industry is?
You're talking about HHR?
Yes, just HHR, all my questions.
Well, first machine really wasn't invented until the late 90s, and it took a while to catch on. And it hasn't been, around that long in Kentucky. So the profitability, again, once you factor in those payouts, as well as the taxes that have to be paid, as well as payroll and other expenses, I'd say is probably competitive with other forms of the gambling industry pretty much. I mean, it also fluctuates quite a bit upon how the economy in general is doing, disposable personal income. I mean, if we have another recession, that's going to affect not only HHR, but the casinos, the sports wagering, et cetera. So it has a lot to do with the health of the economy in general.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll probably especially follow up on how much profit's being made and how many thousands of machines are coming online. But I appreciate you allowing me the discretion to ask some questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And if I could also help with that, Churchill Downs is a publicly traded company, and so you can check those profit numbers that are reported quarterly. I'm sure it's online or available through the track's representatives. Also, one thing we have to remember, in order for an operator in Kentucky to operate historical horse racing machines, it is required by law that they operate a racetrack. And I can tell you, having worked at racetracks in my previous life, 20 years at various tracks in various states, there is a very high fixed cost, brick and mortar, labor, liability insurance, payroll, benefits, etc., to operating a racetrack. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a short race meet or a long race meet or bifurcated race meets throughout the year. It's a very high entry point and a very high cost of doing business in order to be able to even enter into the HHR field. All right, we now have a question from Representative Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dr. Lambert, I should say. Sorry about that.
Doesn't make a difference.
I don't really have a question on elasticity. I did want to make a quick comment, if I could, just on the previous discussion. When we're talking about payouts in the HHR industry, something that really wasn't talked about a whole lot is direct competition. And in that particular industry, it is, especially, I'm from Louisville as well, and with Derby City and Churchill Downs, you mentioned it in your presentation, how we've kind of took a little bite out of the casino revenue in southern Indiana
Right.
when Derby City came on. That is absolutely true. And so thank you, Churchill Downs, Inc., for bringing some of our discretional spending dollars in Louisville back to Louisville and back to Kentucky. And we are going to maybe take another little bite out of that by putting Derby City downtown. And we're still fighting a little bit with competitive factors because it would be nice to put a sports book in that facility because it would go in very well. And these casino facilities also use table games and that sort of thing to mainly draw patrons in because revenue margins in these casinos profit margins are higher in the machine gaming industry. So I just wanted to put that out there than the table games, but it would be nice to allow more competitive factors in this state so we can keep more of our revenues, discretional spending that's leaving this state currently in the South in Tennessee now, Indiana for decades. So if anything we can do in that realm, it would generate more revenues or keep them here in the state. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Representative Gentry. I agree with everything you said. And we have to remember that if we think that the operators in Indiana are going to just sit idly by while we on this side of the river take some of their market share, I mean, that's naive. I mean, Caesars is the country's largest gaming operator, and they have a very large footprint in Indiana. And they have a couple of product lines that we don't. They have table games, they have sports wagering. So that, they'll be very creative, and I guarantee you after the announcement made last week about the downtown Derby City facility, the Caesars, which is now based in Reno, I guarantee you the folks out there are meeting probably right now trying to figure out how to make their facilities in Indiana more competitive with ours. And they're probably paying attention to what we're saying in this task force. All right, any other questions before we move on? Any other questions for Dr. Lambert? Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you to Sean Byrne for bringing your report to my attention. And I also appreciate the supply side economics lesson. People need to review this on a regular basis, not just for HHR, but for everything in our economy.
Well, thanks for having me today. And if is it Representative or Senator Petrie? If he has any
Representative Petrie,
he can contact me. Please have him contact me. I guess my information is around, so email or telephone.
Thank you. I will, and thank you very much. And again, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate the analysis you did. That was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very welcome.
We appreciate your questions, and Dr. Lambert, we appreciate your patience and explanation today. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me today.
We're going to pivot to the second part of the agenda. And while the first item on the agenda was 100% germane to the original purpose of this task force, the second part of the agenda is less germane but still tangentially heavily related. Because for all of you who have been paying attention, we had a meeting where we looked at the various appropriations, essentially, that past General Assemblies have made by ticking off certain parts of the Pari-Mutuel excise tax to fund various industry programs. And there are a couple of programs that have been created since a portion of this funding model was included that would like for consideration by the General Assembly. And the chairman and I thought now was a good time, since we're looking at it holistically, to go ahead and look at, in particular, 2 post-secondary education institutions not receiving funding from the Pari-Mutuel tax, and then one that currently is, and to see if there's anything we can do to help those who are not while protecting that one that does. So we're going to start with the University of Kentucky. And I'd like to ask Dr. Cox, no stranger to legislative committees, and who's doing a great job as Dean of the College of Agriculture. So the University of Kentucky has created an equine program that we're going to learn about that is not receiving any funding from the Pari-Mutuel tax. So, Dr. Cox, if you would, please introduce yourself and anyone else that you're bringing to the table, and please proceed with your testimony. Is your microphone on, Dr. Cox? I apologize. Yep, yep, directional mics. Very well, thank you. Is the green light on? It is on. Okay, very well. I'll get a text if they can't. Okay.
So, Nancy Cox, Dean of the College of Ag, Food and Environment at the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture. And Jamie to my left.
I'm James Mcleod.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a professor in the Department of Veterinary Science and director of equine programs.
I'm Natalie Voss. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Pollock Report and a 2010 graduate of the Equine Science program.
And full disclosure, Natalie is a constituent of mine and a fellow Georgetown resident and a multiple Eclipse award-winning reporter of whom we are very proud.
Thank you very much. My green light
There
really
we go.
is bright
It's
now.
working now.
Apologize for that.
If you could reintroduce yourself, the others
sure.
are fine. If you could
Yeah,
reintroduce.
Nancy Cox, Dean of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment. And it is certainly our pleasure to be here today. I've been at the University of Kentucky about 20 years, and so I have seen the growth of our equine program from when it started until today. Dean Scott Smith was my predecessor. I was his associate dean, and I worked on this program. It is not an overstatement to say that the Caterpillar instigated a series of events that brought us to where we are today. And those of you may remember in 2001 when we had the vast losses to thoroughbred foals in this state, and we called it mare reproductive loss syndrome. It was attributed to the inadvertent consumption of the caterpillars by mares in foal when the caterpillars were covering their pastures. So that was a galvanizing point. It was a tipping point for us in 2001. It made Dean Smith and others ask, what should we be doing better for this industry? And so I'm going to tell you some of the results of that initial question right now. Certainly we have something now called UK Ag Equine Programs. It has a lot of missions typical of a land-grant university. We aim to produce workforce-ready graduates with our undergrad programs. We aim to do world-renowned research. And I will note that we work with all breeds in addition to the thoroughbreds, and there are a lot of other kinds of horses that generate a contribution to Kentucky's economy. And we work with all those breeds and operations. And as a land-grant College of Ag, we also consider service to the industry and the state is very important. So we try to push innovation and new knowledge into practice. Next slide, please. Some of the things I wanted to share with you today are things we're working on right now, addressing major industry issues. One thing we're doing, and we're collaborating with U of L on this, is another equine survey. When the U.S. Department of Agriculture does a national census, they do not count horses unless they are already on farms that are producing food or other crops. So to get an accurate count of equine in this state, we have to provide some add-on to the usual census. So we did a survey in 2012, and we're doing one again in 2022, because if you don't know how many horses there are and where they're located, you can't really design businesses and programs around them. Another very relevant activity that we've done recently is this year, our foal crop had a rotavirus, a diarrhea virus, that turned out to be different from the normal strains. We, our researchers at UK and the Veterinary Science, Gluck Center, and others identified the new virus. We took samples from farms all around the area, and we were able to identify this virus in kind of record time and develop a diagnostic test for us. We were fortunate to have Congressman Andy Barr and Congressman G.T. Thompson from Pennsylvania visit that laboratory this morning where this work was done. Also, certainly, we think a hallmark of our programs are anti-doping and medication research. We have Dr. Scott Stanley, who runs not only a research program, but a testing lab for drugs at UK, and also tracks surface research and testing with the programs of Mick Peterson. We really believe that, I'll just say our goal is to be known for our safety research and programs. And we believe we have a really good track record on that so far. Next, you did it already. Just one more slide from me. Our outreach and engagement that we do, the Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory, I think most people know that we have the highest caseload for horses in the world. We also help with environmental aspects of horse production through the Horse Pasture Evaluation Program, where we help identify the kinds of grasses and strategies for improving the quality of forage. We have master horse owner programs that we deliver across most of Kentucky's counties, a lot of other breeds besides thoroughbreds, as I said earlier. And then we do workshops on pasture and forages across the state through our cooperative extension program. Also, we should note that the 4-H program is one of the nation's largest, with more than 4,500 participants. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jamie Mcleod now.
Thank you. Again, I'm James Mcleod, and I'm Director of Equine Programs. So UK offers a 4-year Bachelor of Science degree in Equine Science and Management, and it's grounded on academic rigor. Importantly, during all 4 years, we also work with our students to develop higher level skills, things like critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability, communication, and teamwork, all of which are very important to success. Finally, mentored internships and related programs working with leading equine professionals in the industry provide UK students with the ability to explore firsthand multiple career paths and opportunities. This is an image that was actually presented to all of you by Elizabeth Jensen on August 9th in her testimony to this task force. It illustrates very effectively the number and diversity of jobs created by the racing industry. You could actually construct related graphics for sport horses, show horses, breeding farms, and even the family riding horses. And in reality, you could add many more human silhouettes to the image. For example, the technical staff that support veterinarians, jobs in equine tourism, and the farmers across all regions of the Commonwealth who grow hay and grains to feed horses. Our program fills these silhouettes with real people. We are now graduating roughly 75 students every year. And even though our major was approved only 12 years ago, we already have over 540 alumni. Importantly, as noted in the bottom of the slide, a full 88% of these graduates are working either directly with horses or in equine-related industries. The pie chart on the right illustrates the diversity of these career paths. So if you consider all alumni together, 16% continue their formal education, but many have already graduated from veterinary schools, business schools, or other advanced programs. Indeed, more than 1/4 of our graduates continue their education, as illustrated in the horsehead figure on the left, competing successfully for positions in leading graduate and professional schools. So as a veterinarian myself, I can speak personally about the need to train additional vets who are interested in equine clinical practice. More than 60% of our students who apply to veterinary school are getting accepted. This is an amazing statistic, and obviously virtually all of them have an interest in equine practice. Concern has been expressed over the years regarding a brain drain, the loss of talented young people who move away to pursue more attractive opportunities for their career in other states. I would like to advance that our program is actually just the opposite of this. It is a brain gain for the Commonwealth. If you look at our full history, almost 70% of the students come from other states. And for current classes, this number is now over 80%. It is the highest of any major across the entire university. And importantly, I'd also like to stress that this is not at the price of opportunities for Kentucky residents, but rather represents national leadership of this program and explains why enrollment has grown so high. Yet importantly, when they finish their education, a majority of our graduates stay here in Kentucky. They fill jobs in Kentucky, they start businesses, they make their homes and raise their families right here in Kentucky. We are attracting the best and brightest students from around the country, and after graduating, a majority of them stay to become productive citizens of our communities right here. These statistics notwithstanding, I think the most compelling evidence that Dean Cox and I can provide will likely be our graduates themselves. And to this end, we invited Natalie Voss to join us.
So as I mentioned, I'm a 2010 graduate of the UK Equine Science degree program. I'm originally from Virginia, and I really only ever wanted to go to UK because I knew I wanted to be part of the thoroughbred industry, and that seemed like this was the place to be. When I first came to look at the college, Dr. Bob Coleman asked me, why are you going to pay out-of-state tuition to come here when you could get an animal science degree at Virginia Tech? And as a 14-year-old, I don't think I was quite ready for that question, but I told him that this is where I can get the experience that I can't get anyplace else. And as a UK student, there were a lot of doors open to me that I don't think would have really been open to me otherwise. So while I was completing my degree, I tried to get as many different types of experience in the industry as I could. I worked a semester on a breeding farm. I broke yearlings. I worked the sales with yearlings. I worked in the aftercare sector. And eventually sort of realized that as much as I like being hands-on with horses every day, my talent is really in writing. I always found science a little bit challenging. I did better in the language sorts of subjects in school, but I thought maybe I'll just sort of keep at the thing that's difficult for me and then try to meld it with the talent that I hope that I have and create a career path for myself. And I was fortunate that I was able to do that because I had the hands-on horse experience that I got from UK. But also, as I sort of sat in those biology and chemistry classes thinking like, gosh, this is really just this is a lot of technical stuff. And when am I going to use this? Well, now in my capacity as the Pollock Report editor-in-chief, I report on regulatory issues, drug testing issues, veterinary issues. And I would have hated to admit it in my early 20s, but I use a lot of that stuff every single day. This morning, I was looking back at some organic chemistry notes, trying to decipher an email that I'd gotten and thinking, like, I really didn't see this coming, but here we are. UK provided me those opportunities and that background. I don't think I would have had the same career trajectory without that. I consider myself a permanent resident of Kentucky now in order to do this job, largely based on my experience at UK and the launch of my career from UK. And even though I've sort of determined that training or hands-on sort of stuff day-to-day was not my thing, I do still ride. I have 2 horses who are also now Kentucky residents, including my first off-track thoroughbred, who I'll be taking to the thoroughbred makeover next week.
Thank you, Natalie. Representative Cook has a question.
Oh, we're not quite done. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
we're going to let Representative Cook jump in here.
Thank you all for being here. My question's for Natalie. At the first horse, is that Unspurn's baby?
It sure is, for our very
Awesome.
first one.
Very good luck. So it's her off the track thoroughbred is a horse that actually came off of our farm for some clients up in Canada. So good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Please
you,
proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. We're so proud of your success, and I remember Natalie well when she got her first of those 2 horses when she was an undergrad student. One of the questions you all asked us was to talk about the current budget and priorities for new investment. And this is the last slide that I would like to talk about. Our operational budget for UK Ag equine programs currently totals about $500,000 annually. That pays for financial management, student internship coordinator, student advising, teaching, the overall director of the program, and our communications functions. We do teach a lot of students. We do rely on a lot of different departmental faculty to teach part-time for us. I believe it's 17 different faculty that we rely on part-time to teach for us in the program. So we built the program kind of bit by bit without having a large permanent allocation, but we did reallocate funding from our College of Ag, Food and Environment for this program. We also share CPE trust fund support for facilities along with that is across 5 universities, and that fund support is restricted to teaching infrastructure and large equipment. So our operational budget of $500K is a little bit of an underestimate when you consider how many teachers we borrow from other departments. We also have our teaching heard at the research facility. We teach at Dr. Lawrence's research facility, and so we would hope to be able to have a dedicated teaching facility in the future. I am sorry that my Siri on my watch suddenly said something. I'm so sorry.
You need not make any apologies for Siri's activities.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyway, so priorities for new investment in general would be, we are very interested in enhancing our graduate programs. We think we have a lot of interest, not only in this country, but worldwide for MBA and business-related master's degrees. We also would like to expand youth education programs, including equine sciences initiatives for science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM, at the K through 12 level. And that also includes increasing ability of underrepresented minorities to access our programs, enhancing infrastructure to support the programs, and to stabilize our operational budgets, which are now kind of cobbled together. So that is the general resource scenario that we wanted to present to you all.
How many graduates a year from the UK Equine program?
I believe it's about 70.
75.
75.
Okay.
So finally, our final slide is just that we're committed to helping keep Kentucky to be the horse capital of the world and serve this signature industry. Thank you.
Chairman Koenig.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so I understand the budget you says is $500,000, but that's not the full cost. But for that, what is the tuition for your 300 students?
Jamie?
Well, would be in-state and out-of-state. Some of the out-of-state students come in the common market scenario as well. In-state is about $15,000 a year, and out-of-state is about twice that.
Okay. If I'm doing the math correctly, $500,000 divided by 300 is $1,600. So explain to me where the disconnect is there.
So tuition does not come directly to colleges at UK, for one thing.
Okay.
I think you're trying to figure out how much it costs to educate a student. So if I were to put in the value of the 17 part-time faculty members who do not teach every year, but we get them to teach a lot, and the value of the facilities where we keep horses, we have, how many horses do we have for our students? About 20. You think about those, they're minimum of $5,000 a year to take care of. So my budget answer was a conservative answer, and we would be more than happy to calculate the full costs involved if this committee wished for that.
I personally would like that. Obviously, we're trying to figure out how to, spend all the money and figure out, tax rates. And, obviously we all know money that we don't spend would go in the general fund, which is important and can help mitigate the tuition that you all charge now. So that's just, if I can get that information and the committee can get that information. I'm also sure that the A&R chairs that serve on this committee would probably be interested in that as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It would be a large number.
I bet it will be.
Any other questions for Dr. Cox or any other members of the panel from UK? And since I gave U of L grief for losing to Wake Forest, I feel compelled to congratulate UK on its huge win against Florida. I'll be there Saturday night. Hopefully they'll beat LSU and keep it rolling. Any other questions before we move along to our next section of the agenda? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
So while we're waiting for BCTC to come up, my interest in this is, I think it's a perfectly good use of dollars generated by the Pari-Mutuel tax to fund the U of L Equine program. It's a good program. We're going to learn about it. But I think it's inherently unfair that we have other programs at KCTCS via BCTC and UK not receiving any funding from the Pari-Mutuel tax. And with the growth that we know we're going to see from HHR, there ought to be a way that we can put pen to paper with a calculator and try to figure out how to be ecumenical to all three programs. So that's I should have said that at the beginning, why we're looking at this. So if we could have my longtime friend Remy Bellick and Dr. Acapo and Dixie Kendall come from BCTC. So once again, remember to pull the microphone as close to you as possible and press the little button that says push to make sure that the green light comes on. You may remove your masks for testimony. Otherwise, we will be unlikely to be able to understand what you're saying. There is a handout as well as the PowerPoint on screen. Dr. Acapo.
Well, thank you, Chairman Thayer. Thank you, committee members. I have on my left, present yourself. This is Dr. Acapo from BCTC, by the way, sorry.
Hi, my name is Dixie Kendall. I am the program coordinator for BCTC Equine.
Am I right?
Remy Bellock. I'm currently the liaison for workforce for BCTC Equine.
And Professor Kendall is going to give our presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Acapo, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak today. As I mentioned, my name is Dixie Kendall. I am the program coordinator for BCTC Equine, home of the North American Racing Academy. So many of you probably know us under our original name of North American Racing Academy, and we've recently rebranded the program to BCTC Equine to better encompass all the offerings that the program offers. So our program is rather unique that we're the only community college-based equine and racing program available. And students that come to our program, they can earn a certificate, a credential, in as little as 1 semester with our Equine Industry Workforce Certificate. Now, students can actually earn stackable certificates in our program that lead up to a 2-year associate in applied science and equine studies. And those certificates enable students to get out into the workforce quickly so that they're employable and ready to get out. We also work very closely with the high schools, offering dual credit with Locust Trace Agri-Science, as well as have high school students that enroll in our courses at BCTC. So one of the unique factors about our program, as we have worked with industry and tried to create a program that is accessible to prospective students that want to enter into the workforce, as well as provide a quality workforce to the industry, we've revamped our curriculum so that our students can come in and take our equine lab courses in 1 semester. Upon successful completion of those lab courses, they're eligible for internship placement. Many times they're placed with local farms, trainers here in Kentucky, and the equine vet clinics. In fact, a recent survey from Lori Mays, the Equine Talent Pipeline Manager at the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, she actually found that most of the employees at the equine veterinary hospitals were from BCTC Equine. So that was part of our reasoning for our revamping and our rebranding. We wanted to better showcase what our program can offer for students that want to enter into the equine workforce, whether it be racing, our supporting sectors with our breeding industry, our veterinary clinics, and so on. Another great thing about our program being offered with BCTC that is number one in transfer, we have the opportunity for students to be able to take college credits that will transfer to either of the great four-year programs that you've heard about today with UK and we'll hear about with U of L. So we're very open to articulation agreements with the programs and hopeful that our students will continue with their studies. But one of our major factors is that we bring in a diverse group of students that may not be four-year ready. They may not be college ready. So our goal is to help them become employable, to develop a set of skills that will help them to achieve employment within the industry, and hopefully expand their education so that maybe they can go on for those four-year universities. We also are working very hard so that our students with our new curriculum, after they've done those lab courses we spoke about with the one semester, they're eligible for internship placement. They can continue working towards their degree because now our program offers our other courses online or as hybrid. So they're placed in employment, able to work full-time and continue working towards their associate's degree so that they can gain that valuable education plus experience to put on their resume.
So on to my slides now. First of all, thank you very much to the task force, everybody for having us here at the table. We very much appreciate it. We kind of feel like the little train that could between our two enormously successful equine studies programs and equine program at U of L and UK. But I think we fill an important role in that we offer the only two-year community college-based equine studies program of its type in the state. That's important because in many cases some students may not be ready or be capable of going on to a four-year program, and so they come to us first and we get them into the pipeline, into the industry, and then get them a job. And then they can go back and pursue an advanced degree. So we play that a very important role, and we're the only ones doing that right now. The support from Pari-Mutuel generated tax revenues would allow us, first of all, to continue providing a world-class equine studies program at a community college price. We talked about tuition and cost earlier on. I kind of call this tuition elasticity, since that's the theme here today. We're kind of fixed on what we can charge for tuition because we're a community college. But our cost to run our 12-horse barn is the same as anybody who's training horses and can earn purses, or UK has, it costs the same to feed a horse at UK's farm as our place. And so we don't have that ability to impact our set cost as others would. And we have to keep those costs down because a lot of students, we're the introduction to the industry that they might have between high school and an advanced degree. Some of the things that we do provide are, for example, we have 12 off-the-track race horses that we've adopted who have been donated to us. We keep them up at the Thoroughbred Training Center. We have to pay stall rent and paddock rentals to take proper care of them. And that's a hard cost we have every year. We work on recruitment from refugee, Latinx, military veteran, and other communities, which is important. We have quite a bit of diversity in our program, including students from overseas, believe it or not. We are working with expanding facilities would also allow us to increase our course offerings and credentials that we can award. And we are now currently working with Lexington Sister Cities Commission to develop like a student exchange program like they do right now with sister schools, racing schools, and other in those sister cities. So, for example, the British Racing School offers a kind of a vocational technical program like we do, and we work with them quite a bit. And this might be an opportunity for us to work directly with them on exchanging students. We also are key in providing those students who are going to fill those boots on the ground kind of jobs, those entry-level jobs that are so important to our industry. We have a workforce crisis right now in our industry that is going to take a lot to solve. A lot of our students are the ones who are going to go on and become, a groom, an exercise rider, an assistant trainer, a barn foreman, and those are very important roles to fill. We can solve medication reform in our industry. We can solve a lot of things in our industry, but if we don't solve the workforce problem, we're going to be in a lot of trouble because a lot of these farms and trainers are calling us all the time about filling those jobs. Next slide. We are also international. And I would say that, including bourbon, we might be one of the best exports from Kentucky. I say this because we were part of founding an organization called the International Federation of Horse Racing Academies, which at last count had about 75 different racing schools around the world. That has allowed us to export, if you will, some of our students to great learning opportunities in places like Kildare, Ireland. I know that Senator West's daughter had the great opportunity to go work for a couple of months in Ireland. We've sent students to England, to France. We're also, because part of our program is teaching kids how to ride horses, I'm not saying they're good riders, but we teach them how to ride horses. We've sent some of our apprentice jockeys to ride in an international race in France. And all along, it's been BCTC when we go over there. So we fly the BCTC flag and the Kentucky flag proudly when we go overseas. And last bullet point there, in as little as one semester, students can become eligible for internships, placements with top equine operations all around the world. Next slide. So I think before we get to this final slide here, the key takeaways for us, I think it's vital that as we discuss how we can apportion parts of this tax revenue, please keep in mind that we play an important role in the ecology of equine studies in the state. We work with our sister schools at UK and U of L. And I think it's important that if this legislation is adapted, a 2-year community college-based equine studies program like ours should be included. We have a cost that is the same as any other equine program, but we don't have quite the tuition level that we can offset that. So we are in a position where we could very much use some help from the state. Finally, I would say that while the UK Ag Equine program and the University of Louisville are incredible programs, are one small thing that we can say that we did pretty well. If you look on this slide and you look at the horse that's galloping there, this is one of our students who came through the program. He had a lot of trouble early on. We got him straightened out. We got him to an internship at Keeneland with a friend of mine, Rodolphe Brisset, a trainer for WinStar. And I sent this young man over there, and I told Rodolphe, put him on a horse and teach him how to, we've done enough. As much as we can do with him, teach him more. And he says, I got a perfect horse for him to ride and learn on. So he put him on this horse, and if you can identify the horse, I'll take you out for a beer. And he guesses? That's Justify as a 2-year-old. So one of our students actually galloped Justify as a 2-year-old before he went on to win the Triple Crown. So, and that's our presentation. Any questions?
Any questions for the BCTC panel, Chairman Koenig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So obviously you all do good work, or else Chair Thayer wouldn't have you, and Representative Cook spoke to the importance of the work you all do before we got to this meeting today. That said, we're looking at obviously taking the tax revenue, as I said to the last folks, and dispersing it. And 2 slides back, you say that, what does it say here? Support would allow BCTC Equine to continue. Mm-hmm. Well, is it going to close up if we don't give you money?
No.
Okay.
But that will make us better.
Okay. How?
Because like he said, the cost remains the same, but the tuition we charge is almost half or a third of what UK or U of L charges.
Well, I guess, obviously we're going to hear from U of L, and they're providing services, and UK specified where that money, any new money, would be going. I'm happy to support a successful outfit, but if everything's humming along just fine right now, obviously I need some more info as to where this money would go and why it's important to give it to you before we do so.
We'll make sure we get that to you, but go ahead.
If I might add as well, one thing to consider with our student population is that we bring in a very diverse group of students, and particularly from low-income families. So the opportunity to be able to expand operations so that we can offer more applicable credentials that can be obtained in as little as 1 semester to a year that makes them employment ready is going to be very beneficial for the population among Kentucky, but also possibly being able to use those funds towards scholarships. We have very many students that come from those low-income families that would greatly benefit and are typically unable to pursue a college education because of financial restrictions.
And we remain an open access institution, which means we open our door to everyone. And can you share the need? We have a waiting list right now. We're down 1 horse, and we need to add a cohort, but the funding is also an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I would also add to that, just to, Representative Kona mentioned dollars and cents. Aside from administration and salaries and everything else, to run our barn costs us about $130,000 a year, and our non-resident tuition basis for based on a 12 credit full load is about $7,500 a year for non-resident and $2,100 for a resident. So you can see that hard cost is something that is always going to be a challenge for us to complete our mission.
Again, the hard fixed costs that come with any equine operation. By the way, I thought that was justified, but I wasn't going to say it out loud because I thought it was too good of a story to be true. So very impressive. Representative Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an extreme soft spot for technical vocational schools because before I graduated University of Kentucky, I was also a product of vocational school, and I probably had a lot in common with that kid. I didn't get to ride Justify. I didn't get to ride anything, but was under a few horses. And so I obviously have a very soft spot for what you guys are doing. Plus, I've been in contact with your students, and I've seen the product that you're putting out there and such an extreme need. And it's mentioned here in your presentation, but I just want to talk about and hear a little bit more about what you're doing with Locust Trace and how we can expand on that, because I really think there's so much in that and so incredible to do if anybody that knows about that high school.
Dixie, go ahead.
I would be happy to expand on that. So currently we are offering dual credit classes with Locust Trace that their instructor is teaching a course for us, but in the past their students have enrolled in our courses. At one point we actually were based and had an extended campus at Locust Trace, and we've discussed with them the possibility of looking into that again if it might be of assistance to them. But anything that we can do with them to bring their students out to our campus, typically the biggest restriction for them is transportation. So those are other areas that funding may be helpful for our program. Where we're based at the Thoroughbred Training Center, transportation is a real problem for a lot of our students because there's not a public transportation that goes to that location. So that's another area of funding that could be beneficial to our student population.
Any other questions? Any questions from our members attending virtually? I have visited the program during morning training hours at the training center out on Paris Pike, and it's pretty neat. Pretty neat what they do to teach these kids everything equine. And as was mentioned, there is a workforce shortage in that sector too. People don't want to do that kind of work anymore, it seems like. So the ones that do, we need to do the best job possible, and the program is doing a really terrific job.
And we invite you to come and visit any member of the task force anytime you'd like to come out and visit. The door's always open. So.
Very well. It's a pleasant morning, that's for sure. Very well.
Thank you, having us.
Gentlemen and lady. We appreciate your testimony. And next up, we will have final presentation from the U of L Equine program. Gentlemen, if you're ready, if you could introduce yourselves for the record, and remember to have the microphones in close proximity and make sure that green shiny button is glaring at you.
Yep, there we go.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thayer, Chairman Kenning, members of the Pari-Mutuel Wagering Taxation Task Force. Thank you for having us today. My name is Sean Byrne. I'm the director of the Equine Industry Program at the University of Louisville. And joining me here is Jack Sisterson.
I'm again Jack Sisterson. I graduated at the University of Louisville 2008 and currently train at Keeneland.
Very well. Jack, congratulations. You're having a great year at the races. Really watched your meteoric rise since you were Doug O'Neill's assistant trainer when Flower Alley won the Derby and Preakness, I believe.
Yeah, I'll have another.
I'll have another.
Yeah,
the son of Flower Alley.
Yeah, out of Flower Alley, yeah.
We were probably the only two people in the room who know that. Probably Remy.
Thank you very much. A humbling position to be in.
Well, we're glad to have you both here today. And again, I'm a big supporter of the program. You understand my position is I think we have a fairness situation, and I want to make sure that we do the best we can to continue to support U of L. And so let's hear more about the program.
Before we go ahead, Mr. Chairman, it looks like we're having a little issue with the slides. They're not fitting in the box here. Can I get some assistance for a moment?
I see. It's not displaying your entire collection of images.
Correct.
So we will get someone whose skill set is much greater than mine when it comes to the technical aspects and try to remedy that. There we go. How's that?
Good work.
All right. Please proceed.
Thank you. The Equine Industry Program was created by this Kentucky legislature in 1986 through KRS 230.550. We started our first classes in the fall of 1987, and we celebrated our first graduates in August of 1989. And I actually graduated from the program, and I was one of the first graduates who graduated in 1990. The Equine Industry Program is the only equine business program offered at an AACSB accredited business school in the world. The program is unique and it offers students all the core business administration staples, including accounting, finance, economics, management, and marketing, along with 27 hours of specialized industry-centric education. Our degree is a 4-year degree, and our undergraduates earn a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, a BSBA, in Equine Administration. We also have an undergraduate certificate, and new this year, which I'll get to in a little bit, we launched a graduate certificate, the Horse Racing Industry Business Certificate. Approximately 50% of our students come from out of state. Our retention rates, however, have dropped over the last 5 years, and I'm sure this is a trend that's happening in all equine programs throughout the Commonwealth. Our industry has been under intense scrutiny, and a number of negative, high-profile issues have made national headlines. But recently, there have been some positive trends, including the passage of the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act, which should generate confidence in our industry. I fully expect as confidence grows in the industry, especially here in the Commonwealth, with all the positive support the industry's received from this legislature, we should see those retention rates rebound. According to the numbers from our alumni office, 57% of our graduates stay and work here in the Commonwealth. What I have up for you now on the screen is just a small sample of graduates living here in Kentucky with their titles and respective employers. As you can see, we have graduates working in management at racetracks, as trainers, bloodstock agents, in management roles at the farms, running an aftercare facility, in the industry media, and many who own and operate their own equine businesses. Keep doing that. We're funded by a portion of the Pari-Mutuel tax on live, simulcast, and historical horse racing. We receive 0.2% on live handle and HHR with a cap of $650,000 annually. We also receive 1/20% on simulcast handle. With the onset of COVID-19 and the decrease in on-track attendance and simulcast wagering, our funding has decreased. We've seen a fall of 16.46% in fiscal year 2020 and a fall of 15.25% in fiscal year 2021. And these are measured against 2019 as the barometer. Historical horse race funding contributions have increased percentage-wise now, and they're now 83.79% of the EIP revenue source for fiscal year 2021. And this is an increase from 71% back in 2019. It's also important to know this is the primary source of funding for the EIP program for operations, faculty, student recruitment, marketing, research, etc. It should be noted, we also receive a portion of the capital expenditure funding available to the other equine programs that Dean Cox mentioned earlier in the trust administered by the Kentucky Council of Post-Secondary Education. In 2018, just prior to my arrival, they made renovations to our offices, and we used funding to complete this project. I want to note, however, that over the last 18 months, we have not accepted any money from this funding, making it available to the other colleges here in the Commonwealth. Included is a chart showing program receipts for the last 5 fiscal years, 2017 to 2021. As mentioned, the decreases in 20 and 21 can be attributed to a decrease in live and simulcast handles at the racetracks. I also want to point out I've included our annual expenditures as a percentage of our budget. Over 3/4 is for faculty and staff. All of our faculty and staff comes out of our budget. 97% total goes to faculty and staff and operations includes publicity, promotion, sponsorship, student recruiting and retention, dues and memberships, research, and our stewards and judges programming. The university is also our partner in the equine industry program. Students must take 27 hours of equine-centric programming. This constitutes 23% of the 120 credit hours necessary to complete their degrees. So students need to complete 3 other courses for every equine course that they take. The university contributes by providing instruction for the remaining 93 credit hours students need. This includes facilities, infrastructure costs, libraries, and administration. I became the director of the EIP in November 2018, taking over for the late Tim Capps. Over the last 2.5 years, we've been busy assembling our faculty, and I'm proud to say for the first time since the early 1990s, we now have 3 PhDs in our department. All bring a wealth of knowledge and incredible talent to our department. Just a quick note on each. Dr. Sarah Memme joined us in August 2020 as an assistant professor. She was a joint hire between our department and the marketing department at U of L. She did her PhD work at Duke University, and she's got a background in consumer research, crisis communication, goal pursuit, and motivation. She also has an eventing background. During her short time here, she's already made presentations to the Racing Officials Accreditation Program, also known as ROPE, the 2020 Investigators Conference, and also the National HBPA Conference. Dr. Tom Lambert, who you met earlier, joined us in January of 2020 as an assistant professor of practice. Dr. Lambert completed his PhD work at U of L, and he serves the program as our applied economist. He's responsible for teaching our capstone courses as well as economics. Dr. Lambert also has a research component in his contract, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. And finally, we just added Dr. Amy Lawyer. She's our most recent hire. She came to us in January of this year. She's an assistant professor of practice. She's also a 2006 grad of our program and completed her PhD work at the University of Kentucky with a focus on educational leadership. Dr. Lawyer has an extensive equine background across multiple disciplines. In addition to her teaching, she's also an extension component in her program, and she's done some work with KEEP on the Equine Workforce Development Project, and she's also leading our high school pilot program, which I'll talk about in a moment. Dr. Lawyer also presented at the Full Rope Steward School in July of this year. And before I go on, you heard me mention while discussing our faculty, but I think it needs a little bit of a further explanation. Part of the mission of our program is not only to educate our students, but we also educate the industry. And we do this through ROPE, our work with ROPE, the Racing Officials Accreditation Program, and also with the Investigators Conference. The Racing Officials Accreditation Program actually began at the University of Louisville back in the early 1990s. It educates the stewards, judges, and other racing officials who oversee our sport. We launched the Racing Investigators Conference just last year in October of 2020. Racing investigators are hired by state racing commissions and are usually off-duty or retired law enforcement. We educate these individuals about the racetrack, backstretch, and the pari-mutuel industry as a whole. I mentioned research earlier. In the 1990s, our program was very well known for its groundbreaking economic research generated by Dr. Richard Thalheimer and Shannon Nybergs. Dr. Lambert has been conducting research, and here's a brief sampling of some of the work he's generated. You might have seen some of these in industry publications such as The Blood Horse, Thoroughbred Daily News, The Pollock Report, or even Horse Racing Nation. Dr. Lambert will be working with Dr. Jill Stowe at the University of Kentucky, as mentioned by Dean Cox earlier, to help support and assist the 2023 National Economic Impact Study of the U.S. horse racing or the U.S. horse industry being conducted by the American Horse Council Foundation. On this research, it should also be noted that during the Turfway Park recent topping off ceremony on September 10th on 2021, I believe a couple of you were there, Governor Beshear mentioned in particular statistics from Tom's work on this article called Turfway Park Renovation and Transformation and its impact on the Cincinnati metro area. New this year, we launched the Horse Racing Industry Business Certificate. Long known for our undergraduate program, we've now added a graduate level certificate. The program is 9 credit hours in duration, 6 1.5-hour courses, and it focuses on important and relevant industry topics such as crisis management, leadership, operations, industry stakeholders, data analytics, and regulatory law. To get to this curriculum, we conducted focus groups not only here in the Commonwealth, but nationally and internationally as well. The certificate itself can be completed in either 15 or 30-week modules. The HRIBC is standalone. However, credits earned also apply towards a U of L MBA. I put a QR code on the slide presentation, and I encourage you to use it to navigate to our website to take a look at this new exciting offering from our program. And before we get to Jack, one more thing to talk about. We're working with Legacy Equine Academy at Locust Trace Agricultural Center as well. It's great work that they're doing at BCTC to test a pilot program in equine business. And our goal is threefold here. It's to set up a pipeline to bring underrepresented students into our program and the industry by providing a business education. The program we've put together with our partners at Legacy Equine Academy and Locust Trace focuses on 3 different aspects. First of all, recruiting. We're allocating resources through the College of Business to assist students and their parents to navigate the entirety of the application process. This includes applying, scholarships, and filling out the FAFSA. Our goal at the end of the day is to alleviate the concerns of paying for college and assisting students in finding and securing as much aid as possible. Once you get them to campus, you want to make sure they succeed, and we're going to do that through a student success program. that includes things such as study skill development and computer literacy training. We want to help students navigate through the program and to complete their degrees. And finally, we put together a small student support fund. We've established this fund to assist needs that can hinder degree completions. We hope to take away the anxiety students have in paying for school and focus them on learning and completing their degrees. As part of this project, we've also developed learning modules, and we're rolling these out this fall. To date, we've been to Locust Trace twice. Dr. Amy Lawyer's gone over, and she's talked about sales and catalog pages, and we also did an industry overview. Over the next 6 months, our faculty will cover these other topics, and we hope to encourage students to consider a business career in the industry. During our focus groups for the graduate certificate, we kept hearing the old guard in racing is growing older, and the industry needs young, fresh ideas. We hope this pilot program accomplishes those goals, and our intention is to bring this program to other parts of the Commonwealth. In fact, we've had a lot of interest from all over the Commonwealth. We're also working through the process at U of L to develop dual credit courses to help these students get a head start before they get to our program. I'd like to introduce you now and let you hear from Jack Sisterson. Jack now maintains a year-round stable at Keeneland. He's a native of Durham, England, and he now considers Kentucky home. He first ventured to Kentucky after receiving a soccer scholarship from the University of Louisville, and he enrolled in our program. While he was here, he worked for Todd Pletcher, Eddie Keneally, and then he moved on to the barn of Doug O'Neill, as previously mentioned by Senator Thayer. In 2018, he went out on his own, and he's now the private trainer for historic Calumet Farm. He had his first graded stakes winner in 2018 at Aqueduct when he won with Oxy Lady in the 2018 Tempted Stakes. And this year, he captured a Grade 1, winning the Alfred G. Vanderbilt Handicap at Saratoga back on July 31st. So, Jack, talk a little bit about your experiences.
Thank you, Sean. Again, I started at the University of Louisville in 2004, and originally from Durham, England, so it was slightly intimidating for me just moving overseas to a country that, I've only spent a couple of weeks on vacation with my family, and I needed to broaden my, thoroughbred industry knowledge, and I wasn't involved in a Coolmore or Godolphin powerhouse back home. And it's very difficult from someone from my perspective, I don't come from a wealthy family, to sort of broaden it back in Europe if you're not involved in an organization like that. So I reached out. I was fortunate enough to get a soccer scholarship at the University of Louisville. And when I learned that they offered the Equine program there, it was a no-brainer for me to pack my bags. Probably my parents were a bit afraid, but I sort of packed my bags and booked a flight and never looked back. I forever in debt to the University of Louisville. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for them. Like Sean said, I'm actually training for Calumet Farm and for Stone Street. I learned a lot at the University of Louisville on and off the field. I had the hands-on experience with the thoroughbred horse itself, but I didn't have any business experience. And I always had a dream of being a trainer, but obviously being a trainer, it comes with, you have to be able to run a successful business. And, I attended all the classes there at the University of Louisville, and they're a massive attribute to what we've done in our barn today. We've been fortunate enough, we've won 4 Grade 1s, we've got Breeders' Cup runners coming up in November, and it all goes back to my experience at the University of Louisville. On and off the field. I take a lot of, my big thing I took from the classes there was time management. And people might ask, why time management? We train at 5 o'clock in the morning and we have to be done at 10. We've got a certain amount of time because the tracks close at 10 to then race in the afternoons. So you have to allocate your time to train. I've got 75 horses now. And if you can't manage that time, guess what? You're not going to get all 75 horses out to train. So I go back to my time at the University of Louisville, where you've got an 8 o'clock class to 9. Then you got to go from a 10 to 11. You go to lunch and you got classes in the afternoon. I did summer school there and started hot walking for Todd Pletcher. Todd was he's a mentor to me, Todd. I may have went to Todd's barn at Churchill for 30 minutes and then shot back over for one of the classes at Louisville. So what I took from the university was a big time management thing, because that's my biggest battle as a trainer right now, is allocating my time to get the best out of each horse, each staff member, to us to grow as a team, as well as communication skills. I have to communicate with owners. We all know that Brad Kelly owns Calumet Farm and Barbara Banke owns Stone Street. Quite intimidating people if you've never met them before, but I've got a relationship now. I speak to them once or twice a week via text, via phone calls, have dinners with them. And again, if it wasn't for University of Louisville for teaching me these time management communication skills, I wouldn't be able to sit here and operate the way we're operating now. Again, I'm forever in debt to University of Louisville. I'd love to make it back there, and we have runners at Churchill, and I drive through campus, and it's pretty incredible to see how, quick it's growing as a university as a whole. And I always try and read up of, the success, the graduates, what they are going on to do, and hopefully I'm just a small piece of, a graduate that's gone on to represent the University of Louisville in good fashion.
Very well. Thank you, Jack. Excellent testimony. I have been to your hometown long time ago. You have a beautiful cathedral there.
We do, Durham.
Durham Cathedral, very nice. Highly recommended. And I will see you at the Breeders' Cup, where I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And Representative Gentry has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, guys. Excuse me. Jack, I do remember I'll have another. In fact, there's several of us that made small wagers on that horse just from the name itself.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And Mr. Chair, I also remember Flower Alley quite well. So you're not the only one in here that knew that.
You continue to be one of my favorites, Representative Gentry. What can I say?
I'll have to download the video or the audio of this meeting and hold that for future.
Believe me, there's plenty of audio, video out there that people hold against me. You can just join.
All right. Sean, thanks for being here. If you could you go back to the slide on funding overview?
Let's see if I can figure out how to. Oh, how about that? I got it.
Beautiful. And I just want to make sure my colleagues on this task force caught this when this was presented. We have all learned all summer as this task force has went along about the saving grace of HHR to the racing industry here in Kentucky. It's really been significant, tremendous boost to the industry here in Kentucky. And there's a great deal of potential for growth in this industry, as the previous testifiers testified about earlier. But because of our unique funding situation here with you guys at the University of Louisville, you're seeing a decrease in the revenues that are being appropriated. And I want to make sure everybody understands why this is. First of all, a couple of the sources of funding, some of the smaller sources of funding, which is simulcasting, live racing, are kind of on the decline. HHR, we have learned that HHR is significant revenue producer in pari-mutuel wagering. And the funding that you're getting from HHR is capped. So any growth that's happening in HHR, you're still capped at the number you're getting, but the other platforms that you're getting assistance from have been declining, which is creating a declining revenue to you. And I guess my question is, have you had to make any cuts or any changes to how you operate because of or decision impacts on decision making within your program?
Thank you for the question, Representative Gentry. No, not at this current time. However, it's something that could occur down the road. however many years from now. I'm not exactly sure when that would be, but it is something that could happen. You know, we've moved forward with a number of programs, and those don't come without an expense. And putting 3 PhDs in the department has an associated cost.
All right, that's good to hear that. And Mr. Chair, if you remember, I made a comment a couple of meetings ago about bringing up the cap situation. The whole reason I did that was because I realized what the platform situation on revenues was, and I was curious about that. And I would ask the committee to take that in consideration. Also, what I want to make sure everybody caught, also with the University of Kentucky that was on here earlier, we get a lot of students from out of state, and they stay in the state, and that is not real common with a lot of industry or a lot of post-secondary programs. We often train our future workers, and then they leave, and the exact opposite is happening here. So anything we can do to support these organizations, I'd be all in for.
I'm a perfect example of that. I did have to leave for a while, and I was gone for 28 years, but I came home, and I'm glad to be back home.
As well as Jack, also. So
I'm not leaving.
You know, that's a great testament, I think, to the programs we got going on here. So, you know, that's what all post-secondary programs here in the state should try to shoot for. So, anyway, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Gentry, and you make a good point. The General Assembly capped back in 2014, I think, the amount of money the program could receive from HHR at $650. So now you can see with Pari-Mutuel revenue model shifting to both HHR and advanced deposit wagering, the amount has declined significantly that's coming in from live and simulcast. So I don't know what the recommendation is going to be from this task force. Chairman Koenig and I will put our heads together, and maybe we just recommend a flat amount every year for each of the 3 programs. And that way we know that they're going to get that much, and they know for planning purposes that they're going to get that much. That might be one solution. Or maybe we tinker with the percentages. I don't know yet. And the Chairman and I are certainly open to that conversation. This is a good program. If I look at the list of graduates from the U of L program, and half of them are friends of mine that I've known for a long, long time, including Sean, who was the track announcer at River Downs when I was communications director at Turfway in the late 90s. So I also need to point out that my phone is blowing up. Apparently, there are a lot more people than just a handful of us who know that Flower Alley was the sire of I'll Have Another, winner of the Derby and Preakness. And I also should point out that while in the employ of trainer Doug O'Neill, that Jack was assistant trainer for 2 Kentucky Derby winners, the aforementioned I'll Have Another, as well as Nyquist, who's off to a great start as a stallion here in Kentucky. So well done, you. Your success is well noted, and we appreciate your advocacy for the program. Are there any other questions? Any other questions from anyone virtually? Very well. We thank you both for your testimony and time today. Very enlightening and helpful for all of us. The next meeting will be November 19th, so we will see you then. If there are no further questions, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion from Representative Cook, second from Representative Koenig. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.